Yeah.
I've noticed that the paintings have a three-dimensional aspect to them,
Right.
and I was wondering if the two-dimensional geometry is somehow manifesting the three-dimensional dots, are they points of consciousness?
That's very good, a very nice way to look at it, yeah.
Coming forward?
Yeah, it is very, very nice. That's one way to look at them, and it's very good. That's one of the conclusions I've come to, that it's like it becomes an interface between this two-dimensional world and the full volumetric, universe, three-dimensional universe.
Like a specific quality at that particular point.
Exactly. Oh, it's so beautiful. You hit it right on the head. This is the kinds of things we're talking about here. Now, let's start to look at some of these qualities. I think what I can do here is I can only, because there's not much time, I can only sort of, jump from one thing to another and give you a kind of little flavour of what we're trying to do. So here we've got these 8, I took 8 qualities out of the 40 qualities of Vedic science. These are the basic qualities of consciousness. And these are the qualities that Maharishi, whenever he was talking about consciousness, these are the qualities he referred to the most out of all the other over all these years. For example, we've got unbounded there. So, the second one is unbounded. So how do we see unboundedness in this medium of painting? Well, the beautiful thing is that the medium itself is already unbounded, even in terms of its nature, because the arena of painting is just 2 dimensions. Huh? We're just working on this flat surface. And if you have just a 2-dimensional surface whose thickness is 0, then that surface will expand to infinity in all directions. Huh? It's only by the fact that this board has a thickness here that we can stop it. It's only the 3rd dimension that allows something to be localized. Otherwise, if we're just in the 2-dimensional world, then that arena of painting is already infinite. I mean, that was a fantastic experience when I suddenly realized, hey, the medium itself is already infinite. And again, then this relationship between the artist's consciousness, this is the discussion that I go into deeply in my book, the relationship between the artist's consciousness and the consciousness in the medium is vital in terms of how that medium gets enlivened and what that medium's able to reflect. So if the vision of the artist is just naturally stationed in that vision, that this is just consciousness, and that his arena is already a universe. His arena is already an infinite universe of all possibilities. Then that relationship between the consciousness of the medium itself, the actual material structure of the medium, and the artist gets changed. The way the medium responds to the artist. Because we know from modern science that, we change the object that we look at, and likewise the object that we look at changes us. So, why is that? Because it's all consciousness, all different flavors of consciousness. There's a chair consciousness that has its own flavor, and, slightly different chairs have slightly different flavors of chair consciousness. So like that, it's all just consciousness. So then we see that this arena, like the totality itself, the totality is an infinity of point values. So you have the infinite big wholeness, and the infinite big wholeness is built of an infinity of points. So this opens up, then there's an infinity of points here. Then because this is arena, if you and it has different qualities in different parts of the arena. So if you place a point here, it has some kind of organizing power of natural law, which is different from a point being placed there. That point enlivens another different power of natural law. So this, like this, we could start to see, on a very simple level, the relationship between the dynamics of consciousness and the organizing powers of all the laws of nature, and how they might be operating in the medium. Because I began to see that these structures that I'm painting, they're just built of those 5 fundamental forms. And the whole, we've seen that the whole creation just collapses back to those 5 fundamental forms. And then we go on to describe and analyze why that those forms actually aren't the inventions of the human intelligence. They're pre-existing structures in consciousness itself. And they actually organize the whole of all the material forms in the universe. They all come out of... So there's a potency of organizing consciousness in those forms. This is why all the cultures, whatever we look at in the past, these forms are always revered. If you go to the deep knowledge in those cultures, there's a huge reverence for those forms in all the cultures, and this is because those cultures are gone to a level where they realize that there's a potency in those forms, which is totally unique to them. And then the explanation we can give from Vedic science is that they are resonances, fundamental organizing resonances within consciousness itself. And I've tried to show, again, I'll just give a quick look at this chart. I've tried to show here how those forms emerge, from the pure abstraction. This is Nirguna Brahm, and then Sadguna Brahm with... Okay, that'll be good. Thank you. So we've got Brahm, then Brahm with qualities, and then we start with this value of orientation here. This is our proposal, this horizontal and vertical. And then we've got the 2 underlying most abstract values of all form, which is straightness and curvature. The whole of our visual world, all the geometries in the visual world, in the end come down to different combinations of straightness and curvature. And then out of that come these principal forms, is the next layer, a more defined layer than that. This is more abstract, even more abstract, and then pure abstraction. And then this is then reflected into the manifest world, and then from the 2 dimensions we go to 3 dimensions, and then to the ever-expanding universe. So like that, and then we do thank you. Then we do a long discussion. We have a long discussion about the actual nature of these individual forms, and then this idea of straightness and curvature, and there's this significance of the vertical and horizontal, which is the basic criteria through which we relate to our visual world. And that's based on, this vertical and horizontal is based on, first of all, this horizon line, in terms of that, this horizon line is absolutely fundamental, is an absolute value, and then our own verticality. So between the play of those 2 things, we've got all possibilities of orientation. But those are the basic orientations. This is why most paintings are either in a rectangle, or in a square format, because what does this do? It first of all immediately establishes our basic powers of orientation, and puts us in the most comfortable position to be able to register the experience that's coming from the image. If you have a circular form, if your painting's in a circle, then you'll immediately have a kind of discomfort in terms of orientation. You feel somehow a bit wobbly. Is that tilted that way? But here, it sets up. So, I say much more about that in my discussion. But like that, we've tried to identify these basic things and show how they emerge from the field of consciousness. So we looked at the unbounded value, perfect symmetry. Why don't we do the thing I started to talk about, which was this infinite, just to give you another example of how these paintings, you know, when I looked at these dynamics of consciousness, then I wanted to see how they were operating in the paintings. So there's this value where this structure of consciousness is at the same time infinite silence and infinite dynamism. And Maharishi gives us a beautiful way of understanding how, on that level, infinite silence is infinite dynamism, because if you take a straight line, then this horizontal line is like the surface of the ocean. There's no waves, it's absolutely flat. So it's a complete state of repose. This is infinite silence. Now if you draw a wavy line, then you can say this represents the dynamic value. Now if you increase the dynamism of that line, then you have more waves. This is this infinite silence where there's no impulses. It's infinite, absolute, pure silence. And then if you increase the dynamism, then you get more and more waves. And then if you take the dynamism to an infinite level, then it becomes a straight line. So this is a simple way of describing how this unified value is both things at the same time, both infinite silence and infinite dynamism. Now, how does that work in my paintings? And so when I looked at my paintings, this is the way I described it to myself. We'll use this one maybe. So what I'm using in my paintings is this fourfold symmetry. That's a bit of a fancy name. It just means that if we take a horizontal line, then the bottom half of the image is mirrored on the top half. And if we take a vertical line, then the right-hand side of the painting is mirrored on the left. And if we take a diagonal here, then the bottom half here is mirrored on the top. And if we take the diagonal this way, then the bottom half on the left is mirrored on the right. So this mirroring effect of the structure of the image means the image is the same everywhere, because over here is the same as over here, and over here is the same as over there. So this sameness everywhere is like that infinite silence value. There's actually nothing happening, because it's all the same everywhere. So this fourfold symmetry gives us that infinite silence. But at the same time, we see there's a dynamic value that's going on in the discussion or the relationship or the interaction between forms. And, you know, you've got these velocity of these lines. You know, we feel this motion of these lines and the vibrational values of the lines and their relationship with one another and its play against these diagonals going across it. So we see there's a dynamism in the painting that's also a continuum. The dynamic value is a continuum, and it's infinite. It never stops. That dynamism, that dynamic value is always there. And just so, the silent value, the infinite silent value is also there. And what's amazing, the last statement is that it's the same forms in the painting that structure the infinite silence as those that structure the infinite dynamism. So in these paintings, we've got the infinite dynamism and the infinite silence together, locked together in terms of one great visual wholeness. So like that, we've tried to analyze these different qualities of consciousness, and I've gone into it in great detail, connected them to Vedic science and connected it to modern science. This is the longer discussion in the longer book that I've written.